Hey, let's talk about when you're sewing something and you're noticing that the insides of the E's, the insides of the A's, the insides of the O's are cutting the shirt. And so you are left with exposed backing. So let's talk about why that might happen and how you can fix the problem. So you can see here on the word collectibles, on the E's, you can see how it is literally tearing the shirt away. And so when you have thin, dry fit shirts like this, and you're using a needle, you are basically puncturing the shirt. And of course, you're just like with a needle. And then yes, it could possibly cut your shirt. Well, the number one thing you want to do in this situation is switch your needle to a smaller ballpoint needle. So if you have a 65-9 ballpoint needle, try that as your very first fix, because it is the least amount of damage. That small needle will put the least amount of damage into your shirt. The second thing that you can do is you can hoop it differently. So let's talk about when you're hooping. Most people will adjust the ring because, to the shirt. And so they'll have the ring adjusted to, whatever they need. So I'm going to put this ring underneath the backing. I have some 3 ounce backing, cutaway backing, always cutaway when you're doing clothing. And then I'm going to slip this on. Somebody said I never measure on videos. That's just because I've been looking at that spot for about 20 years. So I can kind of see it. But I'm coming down from where the collar meets the shirt about 7 inches. I'm getting that into the center of the hoop. So now I have this hooped, okay? And now I'm going to go into the hoop, the back part of it, and I'm going to tighten it up now. I can get to it. Because what that does is that avoids, so see, I'm going to tighten now. What that does is that avoids you stretching out the shirt while you're hooping. You can have a little bit of movement here. It's okay to have a little bit of movement. You don't want to stretch your shirt out. I see people sometimes when they hoop it, then they pull it after, but what you're doing is you're now making the shirt thinner and then you're putting holes in it. So of course it could possibly leave some holes. So let it be relaxed. Actually, you could hoop like that all the time, but I know probably most of you use magnetic, so it's a little trickier. But make sure that you have a very relaxed shirt, especially if you're dealing with this problem. Okay, that is another way that you can solve the problem. Another thing that you can do is you can make sure that short stitches are on. Let me explain. When you have a letter, let's just say the letter I, like this, okay? I'm going to use this slinky, pretending that this is a stitch, okay? So if this is the letter I, this is the letter I, all right? And so what you're doing is you're putting needle puncture, needle puncture, needle puncture, needle puncture, needle puncture, needle puncture, right? Okay. Well, you'll notice that if you are if your design is cutting your shirt, it's probably doing it on the curve, right? Here's why. So when I turn this slinky like this, look how many times, look how tight it is. Oof, if I can get this right. Look how tight it is on the curve. So here you like stitch, 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 needle going in. And then here it's like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So it's so many stitches all together. And that's kind of where it starts to cut the shirt, is on that little curve. So what a digitizer will do, or you could just click a button in Design Shop, and I'll show you how to do that. What you can do is you can make every other stitch come here to where it's supposed to stitch. So instead of coming here, coming here, coming here, and then having all this very, very tight, every other stitch will come. And so by putting short stitches on, or you're digitizing putting short stitches on, that takes away 50% of the needle punctures in that curve of that little, that's cutting your shirt. So your digitizer knows that, but he might not know what kind of shirt you're working on. So let him know, hey, this is a very thin shirt and it's cutting. Can you please make sure that short stitches are on? Easy problem. I'll show you how to do it in Design Shop. Now, if your letters are very tiny, okay, you're dealing with teeny, teeny, tiny letters, and you're noticing that it's cutting the shirt. In that situation, you can't turn short stitches on because your stitches are too small. And so if your stitches are very small and then you're like, oh yeah, let's cut that stitch in half. No, you can't do that because then you'll just have a bunch of knots, right? So if the situation is when you're dealing with very small lettering and you're cutting the shirt, you're going to have to increase the density, okay? The more space, so density refers to the space between here and here when you're dealing with the stitch. So if you're dealing with very, very small letters, what you want to do is open this up a little bit. So the higher the number for density, the more stretched out it will be, which is what you'll have to do if you're dealing with very teeny, teeny, tiny letters. And the last one is hard, but I will tell you a situation that just happened recently. There was a company wanted this particular logo on this particular shirt, and after hundreds and hundreds of dollars of lots of very important technicians and trainers and engineers looking at this situation, it turned out that the shirt was unembroiderable. I hate that word because I'll try anything, but it was an unembroiderable shirt. That's because, come on, some of these shirts are very cheap, they're very thin, and you poke a hole in it, and yes, the shirt is going to fall apart no matter what you do. You got the right needle, you got the short stitches, you got the right backing, you got everything. So that is something that could possibly be the issue. But first, try your needle, hoop it so that it's not very tight. Make sure that you have short stitches on if the letters are big enough, and if the letters are very tiny, then of course you can't do short stitches, but you could open up the density or ask your digitizer to. So those are some things that you can compensate for dealing with a thinner shirt that's leaving holes in the middle of your letters.